What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the 40K Cafe, and today we're going to be going over the Spark Notes of Horus Rising. I will try my best to go over the book in as much generalization as possible, while also still providing enough detail so that you understand the grand scope of what happens. With that being said, this is going to be your only spoiler warning, so let's get into it. The book starts off covering a moment in history of the Luna Wolves. A story is being told by who will become our main protagonist, Garvio Loken, and the story entitles The Day Horus Slew the Emperor. Loken describes the day of the Luna Wolves bringing a planet into compliance. The planet is described to be almost scarily similar to Terra. The planet is a part of a single-star solar system and is the third planet from the Sun. Not to mention it declares itself as Earth, or Terra, has declared itself as the Imperium of Man, and lastly, has an Emperor. The Luna Wolves actually started their approach to bring this world into compliance with civility, and the spokesman that was chosen to act on behalf of the Legion was none other than Hastur Serjanus. Unfortunately, diplomacy would fail, and Serjanus would actually be slain in the process. He was one of the Mornival members, being one of the guided advisors to the War Master Horus, as well as one of Horus's most dearest friends. Combat would erupt over the planet, and the Luna Wolves would use their most favorite tactic, the spear tip. This strategy held the goal in mind of removing the head so that the rest of the body can crumble. Garvio Loken was the one to lead the spear tip and would eventually reach the Imperial Palace. Finally, Loken arrives to the throne room. Battle erupts and the Luna Wolves emerge victorious. Garvio Loken demands the surrender of the false emperor himself, and although the fake emperor says that he would surrender, he will only surrender to the War Master Horus. It is later revealed that this was a trick implemented by the enemies. The fake emperor had hidden some kind of device inside his throne, with the intention of, once the War Master arrived, setting it off and eliminating him. This device was strong enough to send Space Marines flying. Many of them would be ejected out some of the windows, others would be crucially injured and/or unalive, but when Horus made his presence known into the throne room, he was unencumbered. He would walk forward towards the false emperor, unbothered by whatever force this device was expelling, and with a single shot would end the conflict altogether. This would later be dubbed the day that Horus slew the emperor. From this moment, the planet would be brought into compliance, and we would then be introduced to the Remembrancers, or at least some of them. The first one we come to meet is Mercedes Ollerton. She originally wanted to have a meeting with Tarek Torgarden, but he would redirect her to Garvio Loken, to which he would reveal the story of the day that Horus slew the Emperor. Later, we would become introduced to Kirill Sindeman. He is an iterator and a very close friend to Garvio Loken, even acting as some kind of mentor to Loken. So much so that Loken would go to him on the occasion of listening to him speak, seeking guidance, or even just having philosophical questions. I had previously just mentioned Tarek Torgarden. He is another Mornival member, and after the success of the spear tip led by Garvio Loken, he would be the one to nominate Garvio for the position left vacant by Serjanus. The Mornival would act as the war counselor for Horus, giving unfiltered and unbiased opinion, while also providing differentiating counsel to keep him level-headed. At this time, Garvio Loken was the leader of the 10th Company, and he would happily accept the position of becoming one of the Mornival. The condition being that when Mornival business needed to be attended, Garvio Loken would have to select a stay-in successor to lead the 10th Company while he was gone. In terms of rank and experience, the next in line should have gone to Xavier Jubal. But Garvio Loken trusted the leadership and the level-headed mind that Nero Vipus had instead. And so it was declared that while Garvio Loken was absent, Nero Vipus would act as the leading commander for the 10th Company just to keep order. This would wound Jubal's pride, seeing as he was the senior officer and Nero Vipus was not. The planet that they were on, formerly known as Terra, would now be known as 6319, and the Remembrancers would be selected to go to the planet to document the historical victory of the Luna Wolves. One of these Remembrancers would be Ignae Carcasses, an imperial poet and scholar who was famously known not only for his works but also for saying the harsh truth. And this honesty would catch him in trouble, seeing as he would be caught stating that not every empire would last, including the Imperium of Man. And it is because of these words that he was beaten within an inch of his life. We're going to now fast forward to which all of 6319 was not fully declared to be in compliance. Word had reached the War Master and his men that there was still a group of resistance fighters opposing the Imperium. They were located along a mountaintop known as the Whisperheads, and Garvio Loken along with his men would be dispatched in order to bring the rest of 6319 into compliance. Once arriving to the Whisperheads, it was immediately revealed that things were strange and different. The locals would always converse that the Whisperheads were known to be haunted, for lack of a better description, but the Imperium, despite the Vox interference as well as the strange disturbances that happened to the men, would merely brush this aside and mark it as resistance propaganda. And yet, while Garvio Loken and his men pushed on, the Vox would simply whisper that Samus is here, Samus is all around, it is the end, it is here. That is a gross oversimplification, but again, this is SparkNotes. Ignoring the quote-unquote militia propaganda, the Space Marines would push forward and dispatch any of these militia resistant fighters with a scary ease. It was so jarring that many of the guardsmen that were fighting here for weeks would watch these super soldier giants just step in and easily clear out the battle to which they fought so hard for. Amidst the cleanup, Garvio Locum would receive word that there was a disturbance further deep in the Whisperheads, and once arriving, he would find his long friend Xavier Jubal. Jubal appeared maddened, speaking frantically and not making any sense. He would lash out in a maddened frenzy, and Jubal himself, a battle-hardened space marine, would start speaking of Samus. Garvio Locum would make the order to restrain and capture Jubal, and it is at this moment that Jubal would lash out, eliminating fellow battle brothers, something that was not heard of at this time. Despite the initial elimination of the battle brothers, Garvio Locum doubled down and wanted to capture Jubal alive. After a quick exchange of blows, Jubal seemed to be defeated, only for his body to swell up and morph into something that was not natural. Finally, the Space Marines would encounter their first time a possessed Space Marine, swelling to enormous stature that they had no choice but to open fire upon what was once Jubal. The creature would finally be defeated, and Garvio Locum would find himself somewhat traumatized. Unable to shake the feeling, he would find comfort in communicating with his Primarch Horus, who would reveal to him that there are much worse secrets and horrors that the galaxy has to hold. He would then tell him the secrets of the warp and all that it has to offer, but they don't make this mass knowledge and keep it under wraps. And so the incident with Xavier Jubal would simply be brushed under the bed, and all witnesses that saw it would simply be told that it was some beast that attacked the Space Marines. We're going to fast forward now to when the Luna Wolves would answer another call to another planet. Here we would encounter a splinter fleet of the Emperor's Children commanded by Lord Commander Eidolon, to which we would be introduced to Saul Tarvitz, a level-headed space marine, as well as Captain Lucius, a pompous and arrogant swordsman. Here the Emperor's Children were being pushed back by the inhabitants of the planet known as the Megarachnid, and the Luna Wolves would step in to save the day as the absolute command structure and the execution of this whole entire operation was a debacle. After discovering the absolute threat that the Megarachnid 100% posed, a full campaign spanning months on end would finally be launched against the Megarachnid. After the passing months, Sanguinius would arrive to the same call and meet with his own brother Horus. And then another fleet entirely not from the Imperium of Man would arrive to the same planet. This fleet and the people hosting it would be known as the Interrex, a long splinter of humanity that was lost due to the dark age of technology. And upon initial introduction, along with the Imperium of Man, they would be welcomed with open arms. And so, fast forwarding, negotiations would be laid out to somehow bring the Interrex into the Imperium of Man. Around this time, there are a few important things to note. One, the Interrex were actually a society that somehow managed to create a civilization with other Xenos, living harmoniously and peacefully. Two, sometime around this point, a very important figure known as Erebus would make his name into the fore and become one of the advisors to Horus. And lastly, three, during a moment of vulnerability, Horus would express his feelings to Sanguinius, stating that he was under great stress, constantly being tugged and pulled at all corners, and that he couldn't believe that the Emperor left him by himself to overrule and run the organization of the Imperium of Man. Amidst negotiations with the Interrex, it is initially disclosed that they showed resilience into joining the Imperium of Man. It is later revealed that it is because they feared that their fellow cousins actually fell to the forces of chaos and could be agents of chaos. They expressed their history and showed that the weapons in their vaults could have some kind of connection to the forces of chaos as well. One of these weapons that they hold was called the Anathame, and they deeply expressed how dangerous it may be. And finally, despite every hurdle that Horus came across, the negotiations with the Interrex seemed promising. So much so that they might actually finally come to common ground and join the Imperium. But at the very end of the book, the Interrex believe that Horus and his forces actually do work for chaos. The very vault that I just expressed was under fire and weapons of it were missing. And so a war breaks out, all due to a misunderstanding, until it's revealed that Erebus secretly stole the blade all for a greater purpose, sparking the war and concluding the book.